Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, 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 everyone, to Empowerment Moment with yours truly, Dr. G. How are you? It is the month of September 2025. So if you're catching us on replay later, just know that it is here in the United States, where I am broadcasting from my headquarters in my home. The topic tonight is from overwhelm to organization. Why simple systems help you to breathe again. So, we here at My Goal exist to support families facing autism and other intellectual disabilities throughout their lifespan. We're a gateway to hope, we're a gateway to connections, and we're a gateway to resources. And I do this Empowerment Moment program as a mechanism to really provide practical help, spirit-filled advice, if I can, just really a soft landing for families that are on this journey. I'm a parent. I'm an advocate and I'm also a fellow traveler with you on this journey. It's not a journey that by any means over time, I always say that I didn't pick it. God picked it. God picked me for this journey. And as I'm on it, I am meeting some amazing, wonderful people. And I am incredibly blessed with three amazing children who are now full adults. And because they're full adults, I'm learning from them each and every day. But because my son Nicholas is the reason why I'm on this journey. And every time I think about the tools that have helped me, I would say hands down, my faith has been the anchor in all of it. My faith has kept me going. And so I invite you to be a part of the conversation we'll have tonight. So it's going from being overwhelmed to organization, simple systems that will help you breathe again. There's a lot of conversations going out there, but I want to just make the point. By background, I'm a healthcare professional, specifically a pharmacist. But when I do these programs, it's never to be giving you an official medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. That is not what I'm here for. I'm sharing ideas that I have or things that I have tried or have worked on that has helped my son and has helped me and my family. So it is to make that point that I want people to make their own decisions and be very, very intentional about listening and then determining if this is the best advice for you or not. So some of these advice can be adaptable to your child. It could be adaptable to your culture. It could be adaptable to your season. So take what helps and leave what doesn't. But ultimately, know that it's coming from the right heart and in the right place. And I make no judgments. One of the things that I've learned in this 17-year journey of running my goal has been very respectful of everybody's walk because everybody's walk is different. And everyone has to make that decision for themselves. And they're dealing with their loved ones. So we're on here to just say, let's learn together, right? So today I am talking about the concept of systems. And towards the end, I will comment on some of the controversies that we're hearing about in the news lately, but I don't want to make that the main focal point of this conversation today because there are other things that are also pertinent, right? So we want to just say systems and not rigid schedules. These are things that are small, repeated, repeatable supports that can help you carry on when you're having a hard day. So the point here is that we want to go from the place of being very overwhelmed because some of us can get very, very, very overwhelmed quickly. And the reason for that is the weight of the responsibility of caring for someone who constantly needs attention, needs your support, can be very weighty. So we want to be able to be sure that we find ways to not get overwhelmed. So does getting overwhelmed, is that a bad thing necessarily? It's a normal phenomenon. And therefore, don't be so hard on yourself if you find yourself that you had your moments of being overwhelmed. And I know I've been there, and then sometimes it means shutting everything down and then really getting into the place where the mind can be decluttered. I just found a recent, and I realized this is that even cleaning your area or the space in which you operate the most can actually free up. I have found that out. I walk into the house, if my kitchen has the sink has dishes in it, psychologically, I'm just like, what's wrong? I have to wash that first. When I do that, all of a sudden I feel 100% better. I know it sounds weird, but and I know I have the dishwasher there and I can load the things in the dishwasher. I prefer to do it with my hands. It's very therapeutic that way. Very, very therapeutic. So we're talking about systems. So most of us aren't overwhelmed because we're doing anything wrong. Sometimes we're overwhelmed because we're carrying a lot. How about you? Appointments, insurance forms, IEP meetings, 504 plans, therapy schedules, sensory needs, behavioral plans, and then don't forget work, right? Work, siblings, meals, laundry, and a lot of other multiple things that we got to do that just sends us spiraling out of control, right? So these are all things that can be very, 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 very overwhelming. And our brain are very amazing. Brain is very, 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 very amazing. It's like it almost functions like a filing cabinet. At least that's what I think my brain is. People ask me, how the heck do you do so many things? The secret, one of the other secrets, besides the fact that I can do all things through Jesus Christ who gives me strength, the other secret is coming up with a system stored in my head. My brain has an alarm that when some things doesn't go the way it needs to go, all of a sudden I'm just going to start to feel like, oh my goodness, overwhelmed. So to avoid that, I need to make sure systems are in place. Have you ever had a moment where you're like, okay, let me not forget the meds. Let me call the school. Let me just make sure I look for this. Have you ever had those moments? Right? Where you just like the brain is on like overload and you're trying to remind yourself of that thing. Where is the device charger? The best one is having my glasses on and going in circles looking for my glasses. You're like, where is the glasses? Where the heck did I put it? Oh, wait. Or you have your phone in your hand and you're going crazy looking for your phone. Have you ever had that? And that's because the systems are not in place. So the mental buzzing is costly. That sense of things buzzing in the head, trying to figure it out, it is costly. So the answer is not trying necessarily trying harder. It could be in a simple methodology of creating a container so that your brain can rest. And what do you mean by container? Well, I call that a system. So it's a system, it's a repeatable way of handling something that repeats itself. So we do certain activities every day, right? So make sure that it's systematic. So then the brain doesn't have to think about how am I going to do it, right? So this is not what I call being perfectionist. This is what I'm calling being predictable, creating some predictable patterns. This is not also a way of being controlling, but it's all a way of just creating a landing place so that the brain can handle the chaos that can ensue. It is not really fancy at all. It is just a simple reminders, visible, repeatable process for the brain not to be overwhelmed. Really, 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 really so, so important. So think about the three pillars, right? The three pillars is that you have to think about in creating a system is capture. Think about where task goes. So one is capture a place where you want to place things, right? So they don't stay in your head. Or another thing is consistency, a rhythm you can follow when you're tired. So you don't even, it's like consistent. You know that it's an automatic pilot. For example, you know that if you drive to work, after a while you can drive to a place and you go the same route every day. You know you can land to the same place and you ask yourself, how the heck did I get there? Because the brain is now have found a way to just like rest on it. This is where I need to go, so I don't have to think about it any longer, right? And then third, care. So it is a cue that cares for you to just take a rest, a pause. So three pillars that I'm talking about when I'm creating systems is capture, consistency, and care. So how do you do this? How do you do this? All right, so let's look at this scenario. So let's meet Mary, right? Not her real name. This is a made-up name. She has two kids. Maybe in my case, she has three kids. Um, one of them with complex needs. And the mornings could be kind of like crazy. I don't know. Have you ever had mornings that are like looks like a lot is going on, right? So the mornings could be chaotic. Your one child is can't find their headphones. They can't find the charger or the charger for their phone can't be found. The phone is almost dead. Okay, I'm being warned that I'm always talking about my kids. Yeah, one of them's phone is always almost dying. Why? Why do you do that? Anyway, last minute, maybe in the morning, last minute forms to fill out. By the time you get the kids ready and out of the door and it's only 8 o'clock, you feel like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted, I'm tired. Why? Because things are chaotic. There's no rhythm, there's no system. So instead of feeling bad, let's add a system, right? So example can be a door basket, putting a basket by the door, leading out where all the things that you typically may need may be placed there, right? All the elements that may be needed. And if you were like having a child in my house who likes to move things, maybe that door may not be by the door, but something that's lockable. So then this way, as soon as you come in, and I remember when Nick would come home from school, first thing we would do is take his bag, go and put it in the closet, lock the closet, because otherwise he's in and out of that closet. But it was a system. So this way, everything is where they need to be when we need to run. So you're not now looking for this and looking for all that, right? Another system that you can consider is have a refrigerator card. Most of us on a refrigerator, you can have a board. On the board, you can have lines drawn out that says what I do now, what I do next, and what I do later. So that the now things are the things that you know you must absolutely get done. And it could be one or two things that you just like on a really bad day when you feel like you can't even think, that is the one thing that's a reminder. It's a reminder for you to do so the brain doesn't have to remember. So use the refrigerator board as a mechanism to rest the brain, right? So that's a way that you can kind of get make things so predictable. So for Mary, this is a great way to stop arguing with herself and saying, what am I supposed to do next? It's all right there. The basket is there with the items in there, the charger, and everything else that needs to go in there. And the fridge is there to say, hey, these are the things that I need to do in that order, right? So the system carries the load. The system carries the load so that she's not overwhelmed. And that's the same thing I have to do. So, what does creating a system do for you and I? It reduces what I call decision fatigue. Decision fatigue. So I want you to tell yourself it reduces decision fatigue. If your morning routine is placed into like four simple steps, for example, your brain doesn't have to think about it any longer. You don't have to decide, which is why some people do meal planning, right? Things are already set up, there's the structure, and it works. So tell yourself, well, if I have a system, I don't have to think about it, right? It also enables the brain to be like free of a working memory. You're not spending so much time trying to solve a problem. Use that mechanism to really solve something that's more where you have to engage that executive functioning, right? So make it simple. The things that are everyday doable, make it simple for yourself so you don't have to think twice. This will enable you to free up that working memory. And then thirdly, it allows you to build emotional safety. Predictability helps you to regulate. Regulated parents help kids regulate because if you're stressed out because you're like, I'm forgetful, I can't remember where I left things, I'm just like overwhelmed, you're going to be anxious. And then do you know that the anxiety also rubs off of the kids? They sense your anxiety. And so you're going to be overwhelmed. So you're going to be more steadier because you put a system in place. So what we're talking about here is how do we minimize that decision fatigue? How do we offload and decrease? So it's just like a computer, right? You don't want to just have it processing constantly, because some things are being put in place already. So we're talking about what are the things that we can do to minimize being overwhelmed. And the key thing that I'm talking about here is creating systems to ensure that we're not overwhelmed. Those are the things that we can't control. The rest of the other things, if you're dealing with a special loved one, you may be planning to go somewhere and all of a sudden you're like, nah, I'm not going. Now you're also not running around looking for your keys. Now you're looking for your phone or the glasses that you have in front of your face, right? So these are the things that you can do. So I am reminding us that we have mechanisms in place that we can put in place to minimize that, right? So just to kind of recap, what are some of the things that we can do? We can use a refrigerator card on the board on our refrigerator. So that way you can remember. So one of my favorite scripture is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. It says, make the vision plain so you can run. The runner can see it. So if you're needing to do stuff, put it on the board. And I have discovered that the moment you write something down, for whatever reason, it leaves that brain cells, and yet you're more likely to recall it, even if you never go back and check it. So test it and see. You'll see that it works. So the purpose is get it out of your head and onto the paper. The second thing is we talked about the front door basket, right? So it's something that you call grab and go at the door. So here, this is where you put all the essentials, things that you may normally need that you want to just grab. And for some of us, it may be in the trunk. I have a basket in my trunk that I put stuff in there for every trip for emergencies, right? Because you just never know, include the snacks and the whole 9 yards, right? Because we want to be ready so that we're not going on this, what I call scavenger hunt. Have you ever been on a scavenger hunt in the morning, trying to look for where things may be? So minimizing the clutter. And you may say, I am overwhelmed. I have a lot going on. And I have discovered that if you do one little small things each day, you'll find yourself like before you know it, things are in order. Or put things away. One of the things I discovered is I have a basket, or I'll put an item by the bottom of my stairs. So when I'm going up, it forces me to bring things up. And then when I'm coming down, I can bring things down. So same you find mechanisms to put in place to ensure that things are simpler. Also think about taking your activities that you do and put them in 4 steps, right? You say, well, in the morning, there are 4 things that I need to make sure we do. Give meds in the morning, have breakfast, dress up, and pack our device and get out and of there. Same thing in the evening. Break your activities in simple steps so that this way you can remember and the brain is not overtasked, right? So we know that these are all some of those strategies that we need to think about and doing. I'm saying a lot. I talked fast because I wanted to just highlight that as parents, as caregivers, we can get overwhelmed. And the goal here is strategies to help us not to be. And the key thing to doing that is having systems. And systems is what keeps us organized. When we're organized, we eliminate chaos. Chaos is minimized. You can find things easier. It's easier just to discover what you're missing. I will encourage us with a word that says, cast all your anxiety on Jesus because he cares for you. And some of the ways that you can do that is really, really, really being intentional. And do you know that your children also want to emulate you? I think that the more and more I'm getting older, the more I'm realizing that everything that I do, my action, my words are being observed by the people, the little people that I raised. And so I have to be intentional in making sure I model good behavior. And you do that by the way we live, right? So we want to be able to just encourage that. So I hope this content is a lot. I've been talking for a good 18 minutes, has helped you. It's a content that you can use and apply. And so if you don't do anything at all, at least think about one system that you think you're going to apply. And I want to encourage you in that way. One of my favorite portion of scripture is Philippians 4, verse 6 to 7. It says, don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving. So even in the midst of all the challenges, present your requests before God, and his peace, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and mind in Christ Jesus. So I shared that just to encourage a parent out there, a loved one out there. You're listening to me, you tuned in, and you don't even have to have special needs. You may be a teenager, maybe a young adult, maybe an older person. You probably have other tools that you can also engage in and use. But as I said at the top of the hour when we started, my goal is this to support families, and our goal is to provide ideas, thoughts, concepts to help us on this journey that is we often struggle with. So that's the element on which I want to share that. But I also want to just comment that on Monday, this past few days, there was a huge announcement that was made by the President of the United States and then also the Secretary for Department of Health and Human Services. And it has caused such a huge conversation. And I want to use the word conversation. I am not here to comment about our president. I'm not here. I'm very apolitical because at the end of the day, I have enough trouble on my own. I don't. But what I want to comment on is that dialogue about the issue of autism is so necessary. It is absolutely necessary. The statistics is what it is. We have individuals that struggle and they are of all abilities. There are some that have profound, severe, and some that are absolutely living a wonderful life. And that is our prayer. That's my prayer, that everyone will live their best life. The reality, though, is this. There are individuals that are nonverbal or individuals that cannot articulate or can't even express what's going on in their body. And I really personally believe, and it's my personal belief, now I'm not projecting it on anybody, that individuals have other issues going on in their body that sometimes we scientists, and I'm a scientist, don't have answers for. I think autism spectrum is a rather complex, extremely complex, and we don't all have all the answers. However, some of us have been on what we call the biomedical intervention route, which is saying, let's look to see that it's not just a mental health issue, but there's also biophysiological things going on with that individual. And I've always said that. Our son Nicholas, when he was on this journey, there were things that were going on physiologically that if I didn't address it, he would not have made the progress that he has. For somebody who couldn't articulate, he had a headache, he had tummy aches, he had things going on physiologically, had no way of articulating it. And so what we had to figure out is it genetic? Is it environmental? What is it that's causing it? And it is hard for parents to hear that, oh, this is not it, or this is not it, and yet we have no answers. So how do we say that there's no value to what is being said about acetaminophen? This is what I know about that drug. What I know about that drug from a pharmacy standpoint is this. When you take acetaminophen, it does what it's supposed to do, relieve your pain. We love it for that reason. Safer than your non-steroidal anti-inflammatory for that purpose, like Advil and Motrin, or I should say ibuprofen. I'm not promoting any brand per se, but they work by different classes. I've had somebody says, but they're all medicines for pain. They all don't work the same. They just work by different pathways. And when you take medication into your body, the body has to break it down through the liver for the most part. And then it's what we call excreted, usually through the bile or feces or urine, and it gets out of the body. So pharmacologically, you want it to go do what it's supposed to do. And from a toxicology standpoint, you want it to get out without hurting you. So this is what we call, when we do research, we want to say something called effectiveness and safety. Those are the two things. Anytime you take medications, you want it to do what it's supposed to do, and you want it to get out. And that is why, if you watch those commercials, they tell you all the side effects. You have to pay attention to that. That is a legal requirement by the federal government for them to tell us all the bad things that can happen. And some of those bad things, they rate them. Sometimes it could be 20%. Sometimes it's only 1%. That 1% could be enough to cause major harm. So everything you put into your body, even if it's food, can have a good thing and a bad thing. Have you given soda to kids? What happens to them afterwards? They start running around in circles. They're hyper. All that sugar diabetes, right? It could be bad. Now, there are certain individuals that have biochemical stuff going on where their body cannot break things down fully. So something that should not harm them does. How do we know that? We don't. We know in part because we know that there are certain things, metabolites that the body can we can measure. We find that in the urine. Sometimes the liver can break things down incompletely. There's a bunch of things that can go on. With our special individuals, we don't have the full answer, but we do know this. Some of these individuals, when they take Tylenol, we do know that one of the metabolite, not a huge amount, it's a toxic metabolite that the body normally gets rid of. Body uses a compound called glutathione. It's a super antioxidant to get rid of it. And normally doesn't cause any problems unless you have a liver problem. If you have a liver problem, they tell you to avoid Tylenol. If you know that, right? Acetaminophen or paracetamol, depending on where you're coming from. They tell you that. They tell you that avoid it or limit how much you take because we know that the liver will not be able to fully get rid of this toxin. That is the issue. That's the base of the conversation, is that this toxic metabolite in some of our kids can actually cause harm and it causes a whole cascade of inflammation. And we know for some of these individuals, the inflammation can affect the brain and the gut. That's what they end up with this leaky gut issue. So that is one of the bases, and we don't have the full understanding of which individuals this will impact the most and not. So we need more testing. We need more work to be done. So the question is, if there says there are safety concerns and evaluate the risk to benefit. That's what we always tell patients. I always tell them, okay, this medicine is supposed to do this, but there's a potential that it can cause this problem. You as the individual now have to make a decision how you're going to use it. And that's where the conversation with your doctors come in. So it is supposed to be a dialogue, conversation. I started that at the beginning, right? Very, very important. Now, on the flip side, they also talked about this new medicine is not really new, called leucovorin. Leucovorin is folinic acid. If you Google it, folinic acid. It's a breakdown of folic acid, right? We use it in with chemotherapy with our cancer patients. We use it as for rescuing methotrexate, which is a medicine that disrupt that pathway, folic pathway. And we also use it to support a medicine called 5-fluorouracil to kill cancer cells. We've been using this drug for a long time. It's nothing new. It's not that special. But the point here is that in some of our individuals, when they take in folate from food or they even take it over the counter, that's why they tell pregnant women to take folic acid. We know it's important because it helps with brain development. It needs to be broken down into folinic acid. The enzyme or the protein that will break it down, sometimes with some individuals, it doesn't work. So they need the folinic acid version. That's where it's coming from. What I have an issue is that you can't just say folinic acid by itself. You do need the other vitamins. So this is where methyl B12 comes in. So the point here is that it's not that simple. That is my take on all this thing. It is not a simple solution. However, we cannot tell people they're crazy because they say, I want an option. I want to have a conversation. I want hope. I know they oversimplified it. I personally think it was just completely oversimplified. It cannot. You can't do that. Because what you're doing is you're anticipating that everybody has this issue. And so once again, I started the top of this conversation to say, it is here to have a dialogue. You can say, Genevieve, you're off the mark, and that's okay too. But I want us to be very intentional to say, we want more studies to be done. We want us to continue to evaluate what are the other issues going on with these individuals. And I would say this because I remember when I started this journey and we were like, okay, let's consider the foods, consideration for foods that my son was being exposed to that was affecting his stomach. And at the time, we were learning that some of these individuals may have gastrointestinal issues. And this is going back in 2010. And I remember having the whole dialogue with one of the physicians I was interacting with who said, absolutely, there's no data to support anything about gluten-free or casein-free or GI issues. And I was adamant because I saw what I saw and I was living with what I was living in my home. And I'm like, oh no, he's sensitive to gluten. He is sensitive to casein. I know it. And thankfully, I was proven right when we did a test. We did a colonoscopy, endoscopy, and saw all kind of stuff. Anyway, 2 years later, in 2012, the American Academy of Pediatrics put out a consensus statement that if you have an individual on the autism spectrum and they're presenting with behavioral issues, consider that they may have gastrointestinal issue. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you that finally somebody doesn't think I'm crazy. That's a consensus statement. And that is where, at school, in the community, we were able to begin to say that there needs to be more an eye. If an individual that you're teaching, you're in a classroom, they're not behaving the norm, there may be something going on with their body. Let's evaluate that, right? Because they may not be able to articulate or may not be able to expressively tell you. But to presume that everything is fine is wrong. And that was one of the things, that was a big lesson to just say that we always want to evaluate and consider this element. So, this is my piece on it to just say that there's more research that needs to be done. We need to be able to have these conversations. And please, please, please don't make any parent feel terrible because they were looking for an option for their child. They live with this thing day in and day out. Some of individuals are not sleeping. We can go down the whole pathway of sleep issues, seizure disorders, and all these coming. Now, am I saying that it affects every single person? No. And that's really the mystery. That's what we say when you've met one individual with autism, you've met one. But we know that there's an opportunity to look for trends, to look for patterns, and to look for the potential that there are issues that we need to address. So I took a lot of time to address it. I wanted to kind of say it here from my perspective, and looking forward to the research, the science catching up to some of the reality. And I know that advocates out there will speak and push for rigorous scientific evidence that will enable us to really, really provide the best care for all of our loved ones. So on from the my goal parent hat, pharmacist hat, I hope the explanation here has helped some people who may be listening to me. Um, I'm going to switch gears for a minute and invite Nipe to share our upcoming exciting program, our annual My Go Gala event. Annual My Go Gala event coming up. Um, Nipe, you're sharing today's event. I want us to do the gala. There you go. So that's the Hall of Fame and our awardees, but we also want to reflect our keynote speaker also as well. So our theme for our gala in 2025 is Seeds of Greatness, and we have amazing speakers that are going to be there, and we're also recognizing our folks that have been a blessing to us throughout the journey. So we can also share that other flyer as well too. The goal here is that each year, we recognize that there are individuals who have been a huge blessing to us. And more than that, we also use it as a mechanism to invite families to be a part of what we are celebrating, which is special individuals who continue to make strides. So the vision here is to say these are seeds of greatness. They are seeds of greatness. So we want to highlight that. So can you share that other flyer also? For that purpose. And while you're doing that, I will remind us that our asset expert is coming up on October 12th. It's going to come up. And I'm super excited that our speaker that's going to be coming on October 12th. And the theme is going to be, or the discussion point is going to be sensory processing through movement. Sensory processing through movement. So that's our Ask the Expert program that's going to come up on Sunday, October 12th, and it's going to be from 3 to 4. It's going to be virtual, so you'll have an opportunity to kind of theme in. And it's actually one of my speakers that have been here before, Tosina Deboyega, is going to be talking about that. So we're looking forward to having you join us. So tune in for Sunday, October 12th at 3 o'clock for our topic. And she is an occupational therapist who's going to be sharing that information with us. So super, super, super excited about that. So once again, our gala event coming up. We are super excited to have our speakers that are going to be coming to join us. Carolyn and her son Chris will be our speakers, and we're going to have our fun and exciting DJ Nick, who's going to be a part of us. So I'm looking forward for you to be a part of us. Saturday, November 15th, Saturday, November 15th. Tickets are going fast. Early bird ticket is $100. Our after the early bird after November October 5th, it'll be 125. And once again, proceeds goes to support our programming, our grant program that we host every year. And if you're a family member and you cannot afford or can't do it, just email us info@mygoalinc.org. If donated tickets are provided, we will share that with you. If you're listening to us and you love what My Goal does and you want to be a support and you can't come, but you would like to sponsor someone, we'd love for you to be a part of us as well too. So we are inviting you to be a part of what we are doing. So once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you've been inspired from going from the place of being overwhelmed to the place of being able to be organized. So the brain cells are like free and you're able to do all that. So thank you for joining us. And any questions, info, email at us, mygoalinc.org. Once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a great night.